Oh shit! Are we rolling on everything?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, did you get that
Yeah,
live?
yeah. Of course, we
Oh.
gotta use that lead in. Hey, welcome to the Fireside Tattoo Podcast, the official podcast of the Fireside Tattoo Network. We are back, day 3 here at the Evergreen Tattoo Invitational. We appreciate them having us out. It's been a lot of fun. This is our second year here, and we're winding it down. We got Rob Smead from the Electrum Empire. It was just Electrum Stencil Products, and now it's like
Yeah,
Electrum
it's out of
whatever
control
Tattoo
now.
Empire. and uh, and you know, I'm gonna start with someplace that you've really messed up. You so we met at the Impact Project a couple of years ago, and you handed out bottles of Electrum. I've been using it every day since. I might be halfway through that bottle, maybe halfway through that bottle. So you got to do one of two things. Either you got to like make it where you have to use more of it, or you got to start selling like 1 ounce bottles of it, or you probably go bankrupt.
Well, see, that's the lead into what's going on with Electrum now, right? Because that's why I have so many new products, because I'm I'm not making any money off of the stencil primer. I'm like, well, nobody's ordering this shit. It's like, oh yeah, because it lasts for 3 years.
It does. That's not an exaggeration. Like, how long ago was that? That's got to be close, a year and a half, 2 years ago with the one in North Carolina, that event. I'm still using the bottle that you handed out there.
Yeah, we did a sales report, right? Because we gave out that promotional stuff at Impact. So about 3 months ago or something, I ran a report because I was like, I wonder how many people that went to Impact are like buying supplies from us now, right? I was like, it's like 3. I was like, what the hell? They're like, well, you laced them all up at the show. They don't need anything.
Yeah, they're like full size, everything.
Yeah.
The one thing that I do love, I was adverse to using stencil primers for the longest time. I just used soap because I hated not being able to get the stencil back off, and so the early ones, like the ones that Spirit was putting out and stuff, I couldn't wipe the stencil back off very easily. But you made the removal thing, and that thing's really awesome. Works for markers and everything too, so that's nice.
Yeah.
I think that's something that it takes tattooers to think of, because there's like, oh yeah, you want your stencil to stick. Like, well, eventually you want it to stick when it's in the right spot.
Right, right.
But,
well, you know, I developed Electrum out of necessity. I always tell people, you know, they say, how did you come up with, you know, Electrum? And I think it's important for people to understand that that product I developed when I was tattooing still full time.
Yeah.
And it was a necessity product for myself more than anything else. I just was using other products, and if I was doing tattoos that were over 6 hours in length, you know, then I'd losing my stencil, and that to me was the most stressful thing about my job. You know, like trying to recreate what you had in a stencil off of a reference picture doesn't always work out really well. So I just needed to make a product that was just slightly stronger than what was there. So that's how that came about. And then obviously the complaint was, this shit works too good.
Yeah, it won't come off.
Now what are you going to do to get this stuff off the skin?
Right.
So that's how the prep came about. And it was the same thing. It was a necessity thing. There were other products out there that were stencil remover products, but none of them worked. You know, I even went to doctor's offices. You know how they use the surgical markers?
Yeah.
I had foot surgery one time, and they used that purple marker on my foot. And I could not get that purple marker off. It took like 3 weeks for it to go away. And I even went back to my surgeon, and I was like, what do you guys use to get this crap off of your skin? And he gave me this lotion stuff, took that home, and it didn't even really work well. So I was like, man, I got to figure out how do you get this purple shit off your skin? So that's how the prep all came about. And we just ended up finding something that worked, and worked a lot better than anything else that was out there. And it's been a pretty good product for us too.
Yeah, it works great. I use it all the time. So what was your background? You were tattooing. What was your background, and how did you figure it out? I mean, I can tell the little bit that we know each other that you dive in deep on things and you research them a lot.
Yeah.
Is that basically what you had no background in stencil?
I'm not a chemist or anything like
Right.
that, you know, but I am a pretty analytical person. I'm good at problem solving and figuring things out. You said it, you know, I just get into things, and I hyper focus on things, and I don't give up until I figure out a solution to the problem that I'm having. So Google's an amazing tool, you know. It really is. The internet, I don't think the world would be in the place that it's in right now if it wasn't for the internet. I mean, hell, you can go on YouTube, and you don't know how to work on a car, you can figure out how to work on a car. You just go pull up a YouTube video, tell you how to change an alternator or whatever. So it's the same thing with anything else. You know, if you want to learn how to do chemistry, go on YouTube, Google, start typing in the problems that you're having with things, you know, like how to remove surgical marker from skin or whatever, you know, and you just start uncovering things, and the further you dig, the more you uncover, and you just start putting pieces together, and that's how you develop stuff that works.
Yeah. It's funny how that transition has taken place, how you can literally, like, YouTube yourself into expertise. You know, like, used to, no one would, you would feel like, well, if I'm gonna really understand the skin or understand how chemicals react with skin, then I have to go to a four-year university to learn these things. And the funny thing is, like, for example, I've got a lot of rental houses, and the one thing I struggled with a lot was I was paying HVAC people a lot, and I didn't understand how air conditioning really worked. I knew we used refrigerants. I didn't have a good idea. I took a 2-week crash course from a guy that had been doing HVAC he was in his late 70s and really understood the science behind it. Gave me everything I needed to know between him and YouTube, and I feel like I'm probably as good of an HVAC technician as anyone coming out of a four-year university doing it. And it's not something you would have ever thought to do 10 years ago.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost you thousands and thousands of dollars for that education. It's all free.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There's a ton of resources there.
Yeah.
You know?
And so that's a perfect kind of segue into what we're both doing here. One of the reasons you're on the show is that you've started doing. Now, when we first met, you were talking about Electrum TV and kind of getting that going, and you had actually brought a couple of guys to the Impact Project to do the live stream who were doing some. Milky, is that his name? Was doing some like super high end work, and you were talking about maybe working with them with Electrum TV, and then fast forward a couple of years, and it's Electrum Radio is taking off now. So we're fellow podcasters in tattoo education, talking about how people learn these days. What do you see as the future of tattoo education as it evolves past a mentor to an apprentice into kind of what we're doing here and just like shop talk or
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting subject, right? That's a tattoo education. That's a broad range subject, and it's a very controversial subject, right? A lot of people have different opinions about how people should learn how to tattoo. My personal opinion on it, and it's probably the thing I'm most passionate about in the industry, is the education of the up-and-coming artists and the protection of the industry through that, right? Because I feel like now you have so many people trying to become tattoo artists, you don't have enough old-school tattoo artists available to put people through traditional apprenticeships. It's like, so you're left with a dilemma. You have to find resources to train these people, because if you don't, they're going to go out and they're going to do it anyways. They're going to fuck a lot of people up in the process, and that's just bad for the industry. So why any tattoo artist is opposed to good formal training for tattoo artists, I don't really understand, because I feel like that's what the industry really needs to embrace and go towards, because it's like I said, there's not enough of us that have the time available to teach all these people that are trying to learn. So I just had Heather Miranda on my podcast a couple of episodes ago, because she's out here in Oregon. She has the Oregon Academy of Tattoo and Fine Arts.
Okay.
So we were at her shop the other night, and it's ridiculous, dude. She has got like 7 textbooks that are 4 or 5 inches, thick. I mean, and it's college level curriculum. I mean, and it goes through everything, like skin types and color theory, machine building. She makes people make all the stuff that you would do in a traditional apprenticeship, plus the educational part of all the science behind tattooing, and then she makes them go through all the different styles of tattooing. So you start off doing tribal tattoos and pulling lines, and and then she does job placement for them. So she's a really well-connected artist. She knows people all over, and so her course is like 18 months, and it's hardcore stuff. It's like you come out with a degree, in a tattoo degree, and you get placed in a studio, and you know every fucking thing that you can possibly know about tattooing. That is the kind of direction that I think the industry needs to go in. Yeah. And when I say tattoo schools, I'm not talking like these jackasses that don't have anything to do with tattooing trying to open up a tattoo school and charge an aspiring artist $10,000 or $20,000 to learn whatever the fuck they're trying to teach them. That kind of stuff I don't support. But if it's if it's a formalized education that's created by the tattoo industry and approved by the tattoo industry, then why wouldn't any tattoo artist get behind that?
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I tend to think that a lot of times we overlook the evolution of the industry as a whole and just basic supply and demand. So a lot of the pushback is, well, we don't need more tattooers. We don't need to be cranking tattooers out by the classes. Like universities are putting out 30, 40 tattooers every semester that are like saturating that local market. And I get that. I do think that if everything is, if in a perfect world, a mentor and apprentice is a fantastic way for someone to learn. I mean, the old masters proved it to us, right? Rembrandt, Caravaggio, those guys trained apprentices. They took a couple at a time and they produced masters. Unfortunately, times have changed and it just doesn't work that way. And what we run into in 6 years of doing this show are tons and tons of professional tattooers that come out of podunk towns, terrible shops, with a 3-year tattooer that has 4 apprentices under them, and this person happens to be one of the 4 apprentices, and he's like, I stumbled across your channel. My mentor is a complete idiot. I can't get out of this town. I've got an ex-wife and a kid, and I'm paying child support, but I really want to get into it. It's the same stories that we hear over and over. And it's like, look, that model just doesn't work all the time anymore.
Right.
And so I think to your point, the alternative is that we find a consistent way that the industry can agree upon, that we put people out. I mean, saying we don't need new tattooers entering the market constantly. Well, the NBA has a full roster of players at the end of every season. That doesn't keep them from doing a draft to bring in the best players from college every single year. And if the thing is like you can literally walk into stores in Atlanta, Georgia, and buy a tattoo machine and cartridges and inks and whatever you need without a license, without anything. So if we're giving this shit away, I mean, if we're not regulating people buying the materials products to do tattoos, then we sure as hell need to teach them how to use them.
Right. Well, I feel like any artist that doesn't agree with that approach is either one of things, right? And probably mostly they're just threatened, right? They're threatened by new faces coming into the industry or maybe even oversaturation of the industry, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, look, I've been around the block for a long time. You have too. People come and go.
Yeah.
This is not an easy job.
No.
Anybody that's been doing this stuff for years knows this is not an easy job. So you may get 20 people that want to come in and be tattoo artists, but let's be realistic. Out of those 20 people, how many of them are going to stick around for longer than a year or two?
Right.
2 of them maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't worry about things like oversaturation because most of these people aren't willing to put in the work and grind like you got to grind to become successful in this business. Mm-hmm. I mean, back in my hometown, I see shops, dude, where apprentices are teaching apprentices.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know how to tattoo. How in the fuck are you training somebody else how to tattoo?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our industry is acceptable of things like that, but they're not acceptable of a formal education for an artist. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And when you look at the big picture, when you have this industry is getting so big now that the government is starting to take notice of the industry, So now you're going to have federal agencies coming in trying to regulate our industry. So the leaders of this industry and the people that have been involved in this industry for a long time have to get behind supporting things like this to protect the integrity of the industry, because otherwise it's going to get out of control. We're going to be forced back underground, and we don't want to do that.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. If organizing ourselves is definitely the better option than having some government government agency that has nothing to do with tattooing come in. It's like several years ago whenever the state of New York was trying to pass, some government agency trying to pass single-use inks or whatever. They thought that we were cross-contaminating by pouring more ink into an ink cap. It's like, what moron that has never watched a tattoo be performed thought that was a legitimate concern and is trying to make us go to single-use ink caps?
Well, so here's how this happens. Like,
bottles.
look around us right now, right? We're in a convention. It's open to the public. You don't know who's walking in the doors of this place. You could have somebody from the FDA or some government agency getting tattooed here right now. And they could be walking by one of these booths and they could see somebody doesn't have a clip cord cover on their machine. They don't have barriers on something. Or maybe they're not wearing gloves when this person thinks they should be wearing gloves. That's all it takes, man. Yeah. That person goes back to work on Monday and says, I was over here at this show. You'll never believe what I saw. this is completely unsafe what's going on over here, you know? And that's how that shit happens.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why we have to do our due diligence to educate and protect this industry.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's our job and our responsibility, to protect the public from ourselves.
Yeah, right.
Really, I
Yeah.
mean, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. So, what's the goal with Electrum Radio and Electrum? It's bigger than just the you have two podcasts going on Electrum Radio.
We do now,
now.
right.
What are the so with these first initial shows? Do you have a goal? Do you have a subject matter that you're trying to focus on? Is this because it seems like a subject that you're passionate about? Is it something that you intend to focus on? In the
Yeah.
show?
Well, I mean, so it's kind of evolved, and it's still evolving, right? It's not. We haven't reached the point what I would consider the finish line in regards to the development of Electrum Radio. You said we started with Electrum TV, like you said earlier, and then I realized the amount of work it was going to take to build Electrum TV into something substantial. And with Melky's time and his other projects going on and everything that I had going on, we just felt like it wasn't the right time. We didn't have the resources to devote to making that happen. So we kind of came back to the drawing table and we said, hey, what if we start with a podcast? You know, we'll just change the format. We'll make it be Electrum Radio. We'll start a podcast, because what I'm most passionate about outside of the educational thing is the financial aspects with tattoo artists. You know, just like most of the tattoo artists that I know just don't manage money well. They don't think about retirement. They don't save. They just make a lot of money and they just live vicariously, and they're not thinking about long-term plans, you know. So I wanted to start my podcast just to get business owners on, financial advisors, just whoever can give tattoo artists good advice about how to set up their life in a responsible way that they're going to be protected, you know, 20, 30 years down the road when they can't tattoo anymore. You know, you got to have a backup plan. You need to have some money in savings. You need to go out and invest in other things. Maybe it's real estate. Maybe it's the stock market. Maybe, you know, if you made $100,000 last year, figure out a way to live off of $50,000 and invest the other 50. You know, that's what it's about. So that's how the whole podcast kind of started. And then I got Scotty Whitaker involved with it, and we started talking about more things. And I didn't want to cover all these topics myself, you know. I just wanted to cover the business side. I want to get somebody else on to kind of cover the educational material, you know, talk about that kind of stuff. And then with Scotty, I said, you know, it'd just be kind of cool if we had a podcast where we just went out and talked to artists about just no scripted shit, just like what's going on in your life. Like, everybody talks about tattooing, but hey, what goes on in your life outside of tattooing? You know, what about your family, your wife, your kids? You know, what kind of shit are you into? You like race cars, fast cars, whatever, you know? So that's kind of Scotty's podcast. It's called Unfiltered, and it's exactly that. It's unfiltered. It's just real talk with real people, and it's good stuff. It's been kind of interesting. We haven't launched the first episode of that one yet, but that's coming real soon. So now I see Electrum Radio being kind of like the Sirius XM of the tattoo industry, right? We want to build that base up, doing some YouTube stuff with that, just publishing more podcast episodes, getting the content built up, and just trying to build that subscription base. And once we do that, then we'll go after some key sponsors, and we'll try to get the money behind it to where we can really build that thing to what we want it to be. I want it to be a podcast network, you know, like a media hosting platform for tattoo artists that want to have podcasts out there, because it's really hard to build an audience. So if Electrum Radio can go out there and build that audience for the tattoo community, then we can go to artists and we can say, hey, whatever you're passionate about, you know, pitch us your ideas. You want to have a podcast, you do the content, kick it over to us. We publish it on the platform. You have access to a couple million subscribers, hopefully, by that point in time. You know, overnight. You're not having to build that base up. So that's kind of where we're trying to go with it.
Absolutely. And I think if that were something that would have been available whenever we started ours, and of course there were, you know, we started in the infancy, close to the infancy of podcasting, and definitely in art podcasting. You know, there were Joe Rogan was around and was already making a name. Tim Ferriss, some of those guys. But if having experienced the ups and downs of just trying to build an audience, we made the mistake early on of avoiding sponsorships, even when sponsors reached out and asked. And my thought process behind that was that I felt like that we would build digital products of our own, and I would rather sell our own products than sell other people's products. And then I also thought we would build a bigger kind of product review like type of thing. And what I didn't want was to have any type of tension between someone that's sponsoring the show and then having to honestly review their product, and it being important to me to keep our audience first and be honest with our audience. I just cut the sponsors. Looking back on it, I think it was probably a mistake. I think we probably could have built it faster. But to make a short story long, if that type of network had been available at that time, it would be a no-brainer, to just put out the best content that you could and then push it through, through Electrum Radio or through whatever that, whatever that would have been. And especially if you could get help with some of the publishing. Man, we've screwed up so much technical stuff. So we're around 200 episodes. I bet you we have recorded 275 episodes. I bet you 75 episodes never made it because of SD card malfunctions, screw up, audio that was so bad or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just because we were uneducated. And if you can provide that kind of support, I think you could skyrocket with that.
Yeah, it's easy to start a podcast, but it's not easy. Like, the toughest challenge for me, I think, was trying to find the right equipment. That was a huge thing, because that's one of those things you really can't go on YouTube for, because you may say, like, oh, get this Zoom recorder, but the video that you see on YouTube is specific to whatever's connected to that Zoom recorder. And you may not be using the same headphones or the same amplifiers or the same mixing boards, and it just doesn't work the same, so it's all trial and error shit. And it's a huge learning curve. So, I think you're right. If we can do that and just make it easy to where, hey, all you got to do is take your iPhone and some headphones and record a little interview with your friends or whatever, and you just kick the content to us, we'll just upload it to the cloud and publish it, boom.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be an awesome thing for the industry.
Yeah. And at that point, your main responsibility is probably just to become the best curator of content that you can. Make sure that you're not putting, because everybody, you give someone a channel and you say bring all, and you're going to end up with a lot of garbage.
Well, and this is a very drama-filled industry, man.
Oh, yeah.
It is. I mean, everybody has opinions about everything, and it's. Yeah, you can get yourself into some tough situations, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So what about, back to Electrum, what about the product line and how it seems to be expanding? What do you see from a product standpoint? Are you always looking to bring new products to market? Are you trying to be an innovator?
I wouldn't say I'm always looking. It's just kind of one of those things that happens by default, It's just the way I'm wired, My gears are spinning all the time, It's like while we're talking right now, there's fucking shit going through my head, and it's like the voices never quiet down with me. So it's like with Electrum, I just want to put out the best products that I can put out for tattoo artists. So if I see a need for something, I go after it. Like if it's not already out in the industry, I'll go after it and try to create it. And a lot of people will say to me, well, hey, there were already stencil products out on the market before you came out with Electrum. You basically just did what everybody else was already doing. But that's not true, because I think if you look at the reviews of the products, if you talk to people, the majority of people will tell you that Electrum is a superior product. And I told you that I developed that out of necessity, because the products that I was using weren't working. So all of our products are just based off of necessity of things that I see need to be improved in the industry. Yeah. So I wouldn't call myself an innovator necessarily. I would call myself an improver. Yeah. That's all Electrum is about, just trying to improve the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think from the for the stencil gel standpoint, that and it takes someone that has experienced the problem to need to solve it, and that's a lot of tattooers are concerned about outside industries making their way in, either from an investment standpoint or trying to create products and things like that. But the biggest advantage that we have as people that sit and do tattoos all day is that we understand we're way closer to the problems, and those problems are almost impossible for someone that has never experienced them to address. Right. And so if you take take a lot of companies that have just made their way into tattooing by default, or that have just recognized an opportunity in an industry and tried to put together a team that can address the opportunity. If they don't have tattooers on those teams, they're really fighting an uphill battle. And this is the type of industry that is really quick to recognize that, and will call you out on it.
You can get chewed up and spit out real quick.
Yeah. What do you think, because you are a business-minded person, as long as either of us have been tattooing, the by tattooers for tattooers kind of stamp has always really meant a lot. And to me, it's I appreciate it, but I feel like that it makes a really critical assumption that I think is really often wrong, and that's that we are really good at everything. You know, and we're good at a few things. We're good at doing tattoos, hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully we're good at drawing, you know,
Right.
and reading the skin and things like that. But I've met people that are coming in from outside industries that are trying to get in that probably really do bring something valuable to the table and are really struggling to get a foothold. And to be perfectly honest, are making their way into cosmetic tattooing because it's an easier avenue to get into, easier for investment, more opportunity for partnerships, more direct lines to from manufacturing to delivery, all that type of thing. And our industry may be missing out because of it, I think.
Yeah, I agree to some point. Yeah, I think so. But I think I don't know, man. I just think we have to be welcoming and we have to be open-minded to anything that's presented to us. And I think that's a roadblock in the industry. I just think ego is a huge problem for a lot of people, man. You have to be able to set your ego aside and say, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. If I'm not good at this, I need to find the resources that are good at this and be accepting to their opinions and their feedback to make what I'm not good at work.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way you get the best results and the best products.
Yeah.
You know, but so many people aren't open to that stuff, and that's why you don't evolve. You know, you just don't evolve.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like so many people are like, I'm not using an iPad. That's stupid. You know, but why is it stupid? You know, if it takes your 6-hour tattoo down to a 5-hour tattoo, how is that not a beneficial tool? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think you have to be open to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you so you're not tattooing much at all anymore, or are you?
I haven't really tattooed since 2015, and it's just because just as Electrum's growing, I just don't have time. You know, it's just one of those things that it's the last thing I want to do now at the end of a long day. You know, I'm beat. I don't want to even think about tattooing at the end of a day anymore. You know, it's just I have so many people that I need to tattoo because I have a lot of stuff from early days that's not the best stuff out there, and it's still walking around, and I need to fix those things up, you know?
Right.
So some of that stuff I need to dial in and get back into just because, but yeah, I don't tattoo much. I miss it a lot, but it's just one of those things. The business is driving me now, so I have to do what the business requires of me.
Yeah, and it seems to me that is your kind of calling and your passion anyways, and that's, you know, we have a mutual friend in Derb Morrison who's experienced a similar thing where he made a name for himself as a tattooer in the 90s, and then as he grew, he found that he was actually far more of a business mind and especially as tattooing evolved. And I know the first time we had him on the show, one of my first questions to him was like, "Are you able to stay on top of your drawing? I mean, look at how all the style that you were kind of a pioneer in. Look at how this the high color, high contrast kind of stuff that he was doing in the 90s. Like, look at all these people that are like blowing by doing that kind of stuff." And he was like, "Dude, I can't even try. Like, I don't get to work on my drawing anymore." He's like, "No way." And of course, since then, he's got enough health. Like, he struggles just to tattoo at all, I think. But
he's in a lot of pain.
Yeah. I say it's unfortunate, but it may not be. It may be, that's probably a good thing for all of us that Derb stopped tattooing and started.
Well, Derb's a good example of innovation in the industry, right? And he's completely focused on ergonomics and, how to protect the artist over long periods of time, so you're not going to have that physical breakdown that tattoo artists experience from sitting hunched over for years and years and years, and I applaud Derb. That's the kind of stuff that we need in this industry, the people that are trying to keep the industry safe and moving forward. And that's, if Derb doesn't tattoo anymore because he's focused on that, then that's great,
Yeah.
That's great for the industry. He's making sacrifices for the betterment of the industry.
Yeah, I agree. So you said that Scotty's episode has not podcast hasn't started airing yet. You're doing your own on business? Are those out?
Yeah, I think we have. I think we've published 3 episodes now.
Okay.
I have several more in the queue that are getting. We're just releasing one a week, so that's a good thing about going to conventions. You can wrap up, a good amount of interviews, and then you're not stressed out trying to figure out who you're going to get on this week's show. You have one in the queue that you can just bang out, and Scotty's is a different animal altogether. So we've gotten some very good interviews, but Scotty's stuff is very, very colorful, and Some of it will probably be controversial, which is why I have to put that disclaimer in there to say, hey, these opinions are not Electrum Radio's opinions.
Yeah.
These are all independent podcasts, and you know, it is what it is. But we've gotten some good stuff with Scotty, and it's going to be really good. But we're just trying to figure out which one we want to publish first in the order that we want to release them in, because it's a very strategic thing that we're trying to do with that. So, but when we get back from this show, we'll publish Scotty's first episode next week.
Are you planning for both of them to be weekly shows?
For sure.
Yeah.
Depending on the amount of content we get, we may go twice a week if we have a good amount of interviews out there. But basically, it's just all about what the people want. You know, we just listen to the people, and you know, if they want more content, we'll put more out there.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm excited. I'm excited to check it out. So you'll be iTunes, Stitcher, all the regular podcast platforms?
Yeah. I'm on Spotify and iTunes for sure right now. We're working on getting them to the other ones. It's just a lot of work, man.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to learn how to do all this stuff, too.
It's a lot of fun. I look forward to listening in and watching you fall on your face along the way.
Well,
it'll happen.
You've been a lot of help to me, man, so I do appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I'm happy to.
It's good that you don't view me as competition to you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because it seems to be a big thing in the industry where everybody that's trying to do the similar things is just like catty about it, and you haven't been like that at all with me, and here I am doing your podcast, which is cool, and I appreciate that. And
I'm happy too. I think, you know, if CBS just had one show that was on, it would be a real shitty station, you know. And so I think and I know you're trying to build a podcast network, but I think of us all, whether we're on Electrum or whether it's just Fireside or you know, there's some other ones that are out there now. They seem to be popping up left and right, and I think the more the merrier. I do think the cream will rise to the top, so I don't feel threatened. I mean, I guess the way that I think of it is that I try to be genuine and be myself on this and in our technique episodes. If I'm doing that, there's no way you can mimic it. If you're doing that, there's no way I can mimic it. So some people will identify with the way that I present a problem or solve a problem, and others will identify with you, and some may like both, you know. And so that's just the way I've always thought of it. And when I first got into tattooing, there were a couple of other podcasts that were coming up around the same time. None of them are around anymore, so we've outlasted. But when I reached out originally to those groups, I got that same kind of pushback. No, dude, you're the enemy. You don't get to see what kind of camera I'm using.
Yeah, it's crazy,
like
right?
It's like, well, what do you mean I'm the enemy? Like, it's just crazy.
That's what I mean. To me, it's just like I view the tattoo community as a family, a conglomerate. You know, like we're all out here just trying to make a living in the same industry, and I'll support. You know, I support your podcast because I'm not doing the same thing as you anyway. I'm not doing technique podcasts and videos. It's not my thing. I'm focused on the business side of tattooing. Yeah. You know, so hopefully one day we get the Fireside Network publishing content through Electrum Radio. You know what I mean? I'm all about it. So it's cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm excited to see what you do.
Thank you,
Thanks
man.
a lot, man. Check them out. Electrum.
ElectrumRadio.com, ElectrumSupply.com. Instagram's Electrum Supply, Electrum Radio, Electrum Stencil Products. Same thing on Facebook.
If you just type in Electrum, it'll
Google Electrum. You'll find all of it.
Yeah, there you go. The biggest mistake that we made to start, you've already dodged. You used the same name for everything.
Well, I tried.
We botched that from the very start. Like, we did everything we could to keep our audience from being able to find us for a long time. So, thanks, Rob. Thank you guys, as always, for supporting what we do. Thanks again to Riley and Joshua for having us back out to Evergreen. This is a beautiful part of the world. It's always an awesome convention, and we'll catch you next time.
Perfect.